Good evening, everyone. Myself, Kalpana Patel, the National Youth Representative, National Outreach of the Wiki Water Resource Council, welcomes you all on behalf of the Monday Munching, Musing with Women for Water. This is an initiative of the Eco Development and Research Cell, a not-for-profit initiative of the Environmental Design Consultants, Ahmedabad, with support of the Water Resources Council of the Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Wiki WRC, and in collaboration with W4W Foundation and media partner Counterview. I am joined today with Dr. Mansi Bal Bhargav, who is the National President of the Wiki Water Resources Council. Welcome, Mansi. We are glad to start the conversation, namely Monday Munching, using with women for water, which we colloquially refer to as blue lips, amongst us, aim to share the worries and the wisdom by the women, for the women, of the women in the water sector. In here, we hope to learn about the water endeavors in a regular, disciplined manner like a masterclass. Today, we are here to listen in more about Garima Punia, Wiki Water Resources Council State President, Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Garima Punia is a waste management expert with about 6 years of experience in different geographies of the country. In 2019, she founded the Kachrewale project, the first waste management initiative in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which created a successful and scalable solution for waste in the highly challenging locations. Between 2019 and 21, as a solid waste management consultant for the Andaman and Nicobar government, she has helped design and set up waste management systems in different parts of the island. Welcome, Garima. We are delighted to have this conversation with you. Thank you for your time and for agreeing to do this conversation on Women for Water. As a first point of discussion, Garima, since it's like a discussion, we would want you to take us through your water journey, as how you stepped into the water sector and what are your current engagements like.
Thanks, Kalpana. Thanks, Mansi, for having me here. So water. I mean, it's in mainstream media and mainstream discourse, it has not been easy to look at the connection between waste and water. So when people usually ask what I'm working on and I say waste, nobody thinks water really, even though landfills pollute waters, not having waste management system also pollutes waters. It's a huge problem. In fact, the problem of pollution of oceans is largely about waste, actually. All the waste things that we put into the ocean. So that is my connection to water. And the hope and aim is that through my work, I can help set up systems wherein this pollution can be reduced. So there is less waste that goes into water, because there's only so much water on earth. There's limited, we can't make more. And if we keep polluting it, then we don't have enough, simply. I mean, which is the crisis we're all facing today as a species. So that's my connection to water. Yeah.
So, Garima, what are your current engagements like?
So currently, I've just finished developing this program, which will be initiated hopefully this December in the Andamans, and the focus is on marine litter. And when I say marine litter, what I mean is primarily trash that comes from outside countries to India. So the oceans are, very beautiful, vast system. And in all of that, one of the things that ocean does is, while there are currents of hot and cold water that travel from one place to another, these currents, because they affect the air temperature and in turn they create weather. But these currents also carry things across the waters. For example, when the Japan tsunami had happened, nearly 2 or 3 years after that, there was a piece of debris. If I remember correctly, it was of a ship and it was more than 100 feet long, and it landed up at a coast in America. So you can imagine how much distance it must have traveled to reach there. And trash has been doing that since the last 40, 50 decades. And it's so much that we have something that is called 5 garbage patches in the ocean. And, the size of even 1 or 2 of them is more than twice the size of India. So there is just that much trash in the ocean. And unfortunately, 70% of it, as per estimates and studies, is already under the ocean. So what comes onto beaches is a meager 15-30%. And it's very important to recover that. But also, more than recovery, it's very important to stop it going into the ocean in the first place. So the program that I have designed, the idea is to start looking at marine litter at a very systematic manner in the country, do a lot of rigorous data collection. It is only when we have data that we can advocate against the pollution of oceans, because this kind of data is very hard to refute. Sadly, such data is not available very widely when it comes to India, which is the reason that the program becomes possibly first of its kind in the country to be implemented like this. So we collect data from beaches about marine litter, which country it is coming from, what brand it is, what kind of plastics it is. And we do the same when it comes to marine litter that is stuck at coral reef sites, because Andaman is known around the world for its coral reefs. And one of the things that they do, besides, giving us all these beautiful fish, is that they also filter the ocean water. They also keep it clean. And once plastic comes in contact with corals, the likelihood of it dying from disease increases from 4 to 81%. That's a 21-fold increase. So the idea is to collect this kind of data and have a baseline, and then replicate such programs in collaboration with other organizations across the country. As sea level rises, it's not just water that's going to rise. I think trash is also going to keep rising on the coastline. So that is definitely a concern in the coming years.
Thank you so much for telling so much about the ocean litter and all. So we just wanted to know, what does a typical day at your work look like? Like, what are the kind of tasks or activities that you find are difficult or are rewarding at your workplace?
I usually find work in field more rewarding than work at desk, though I cannot deny the importance of the latter also, because I've worked with bureaucracy in policy decision making also, and they definitely have an important role, especially because once that a policy or a law is set in place, you have this very strong backing. Now there's a door open and a lot of avenues can open up through that. If that policy is not set in place in the first hand for marine litter, for example, there's no policy that India has, then the work is even more hard, because you have to convince people that this is required and we are doing this, so we can make a policy and then we can do more implementation. But yes, usually, a day in the Andamans, depending on the kind of project I have, I could be going around villages, talking to people. For this project, I will be spending a lot of time on the beaches, speaking to divers as well, because they will also be giving me data. And I think primarily a lot of my learning in my work has come from interacting with so many people at different places. So I think that's why I'm highlighting that a little more. Few years back, it was a typical day spent would be, 8 hours spent with waste pickers, and they also taught me a lot. So I guess every location comes with its different set of things, but a personal preference remains for field work, where I can go out and be doing things, getting my hands dirty.
Since you have just mentioned, Garima, that you really enjoy being in the field, so definitely it takes a lot of time also. So you have also been involved in the desk job. So understanding all this somewhere puts up a question that how do you find time for a balance in work and personal life? Like, do you feel that sometimes you're compromising on one side of the story?
Yes, there have been many times that I've been a workaholic. And to be very honest, I think it's extremely important to have work-life balance. And, I would think better to have a small garden or a farmish of my own, make, grow food with my own hands, not have to solve plastic pollution and these big problems. It's not that my work does not give me joy, but that work would, that's the kind of life I think would be amazing. But in terms of balance, I try to incorporate some of those elements. For example, when I was in Port Blair, when I lived there continuously for 2 years, I had more than 100 plants, and they were my lifeline. Every morning, I would wake up, talk to them, spend some time with them, check if there were some insects or any of them, if they needed more water than I had put, or egg grooming if they needed, and they kept me alive. I mean, it was just an amazing experience to have that. And the good bits of living in rural places or places like the Andamans is that you want to get out of the house, and there's all this nature around you, and just taking a walk on the beach for half an hour is work-life balance. I mean, I can't deny that. So yeah, yes, but I just have to reiterate, I mean, I am not a fan of a lifestyle wherein we prioritize work too much, or we are pushing ourselves too much, going beyond what natural limits have been set for us by nature. I think all of that causes so many problems on so many levels: mental health, physical health, family, relationships, everything gets screwed up because of that.
I agree. Since considering you're doing so much of work, it's great that you are somewhere prioritizing your personal life also, and you're trying to find that time and that happiness in doing whatever you do, being, surrounded with plants or something else that you enjoy. That's lovely to know. Now I'll request Dr. Mansi to take the discussion forward.
Thank you, Kalpana. Thanks a lot. And I was really enjoying the two young girls talking about water life and all kinds of things. And let me then bring the conversation more focused towards, what we really want to know from you about the women leadership. That's the very idea of having this conversation. So Garima, now because we have come to know each other through this platform of Wiki Water Resource Council, you also reckon that while we are celebrating women leadership as a network of nearly 70 women now, for that matter, I'm sure you also reckon the fact that there are not many women leaders who are recognized as, or who are looked up to as women leaders. And even if they are there and they are doing good work, their work is not much acknowledged across the fraternity. Why do you think we have this kind of situation? I mean, we also know by statistics, I mean, when I was presenting also to the Wiki Water Resource Council women, that there is only one woman per 5 water professionals. And in India, we actually even fare lower than that. So why do you think we have this kind of situation, despite the fact that we see so many women who are working in water and environment? Where is the leadership problem here?
It's very hard to pinpoint and say where is the problem, because when it comes to
But
gender,
your experience.
I mean, because so when I first started working, my interest was actually in the field of gender, and I wanted to get a PhD in gender and philosophy. And so these are questions that I have thought about, and also questions that I've not found very straightforward answers to. I do feel that as a country, as a culture, we've definitely had women have played a lot of important roles, whether it be in culture or mythology, or academics, any other field. I also feel that past 100, 200, 300 years, and just disclaimer, this is not, I'm not pointing fingers on the British or invaders or any of them, but an amalgamation of things. not just for India, for the rest of the world. And I think primarily, if I had to point fingers, I would point it at colonialism and imperialism. These are things that have definitely fractured the society in many ways, and by fractured, they've put a monetary value on everything. There's Amitabh Ghosh's beautiful book that came out, Nutmeg's Curse, and it talks about exactly this 500 years ago when the English and the Dutch started, when they wanted monopoly in trade. Trade has been happening for thousands of years. It was not the first time that English were doing it, but they were so competitive that, it was down to the point where they said that, this thing will grow only on one island from where we can take it and we can
clean
sell
the
it.
clan. Even clean the clan if required.
Yes, mass killing, genocide, all of that has happened in the name of trade and profits. And the moment we start putting value on these things, monetary value, I think we are completely disconnected from reality. I work in villages very often, and Uttarakhand, for example, where I was living, there's no water connection in anyone's houses, and the women do spend a considerable lot of time getting water, and I see this dynamic where there are these men who uphold some older traditions, wherein they actually contribute to the housework, whether it be taking care of the animals or the kids. So many men in the village actually knew how to cook, and they cooked amazing food. It was amazing to see this. But the bulk of the population, unfortunately, the men have taken to, domestic abuse. Alcohol is a huge problem. And now, where I think at some point there was a more of a balance in a common woman's life or a couple's life, family life, wherein duties were divided, but both of them did work. I mean, I look at my own village where women go out in the fields and still work. It's not like they sit in the house and, are only in the kitchen. They do a lot of work. And that is really changing. And I think part of the problem is the commercialization, because the man now feels I only have to go get money for my family. And that money then translates to spending, I don't need to spend time with my kids. I don't need to spend time with my wife. I can do whatever I want with the money. And the society values this kind of monetary leadership a lot more than it does other kinds of leadership, which may happen at a smaller scale. I mean, there are plenty of people who are doing work with their communities without wanting fame, without wanting popularity. I mean, a common person in the Himalayas, a woman who has to organize her entire household's water rations, understand how much I have to get, how much has to be spent for washing utensils. It's not a small thing. You try, if I were to go try, do it randomly, and if I had to do it, I think I'd fail. It would take me so much time to understand that. But this means understanding what is available locally, what I can consume, what I can't. And it's sad that despite women having this knowledge, we have not been able to, in the current system, extract it out. And when I say extract it I mean in terms of leadership, use that common sense, use that experience, generations of experience, rather than just going after people, especially men who, go take a degree from somewhere and, they're consultants in water, and they may be, I mean, when it really comes to the grassroots of it, they may be really bad at managing water, So, I mean, you can't manage water at your own house. How will you manage it for the country? So I don't know if that answers the question.
I will ask a little bit more here, because you bring a very interesting point from history also, that it was not like this in the past, where and men used to also engage in this responsibility of taking care of the house or the community for that matter. And women even till date takes that more as a moral responsibility than as a monetary responsibility, which is kind of a division of labor, we can say like that. But having said that, the division of labor existing, I mean, I don't even recall from the history, apart from the Chipko movement, where women leadership, as in, not by degree or not by position for that matter, but where women leadership has been, even Chipko movement for that matter, is not even seen as a Gaura Devi's movement, for you know what I mean. But even since antiquity until date, the role of women as a leader is yet not an established position. That's my concern. I mean, having a position and saying that now this is a woman leader is a completely different thing. But having a general acceptance in the society that women are leading and taking decisions, that is still a scarcity. Where do you see, a situation here?
The acceptance bit, yes, there is a problem there, and I often wonder why. And I felt it while working myself. A woman consultant working with bureaucracy versus a man who's doing it is a very different experience. I've had
Yes.
very trashy articles written about me that would like to reduce me to my face and say that I got a job just because I look pretty or they think I look pretty. And these are things that have been said, and these would not be said about
Right.
men. Yeah, I mean, I haven't come across any friend complaining to me about this, a guy. So this happens, and this acceptance definitely is low. And but if you're asking me why, that's again something I'm trying to understand. Something has definitely changed in the way that we value things. I don't know if this answers your question, but if
It
I
does.
say, okay, yeah. So, and just to elaborate that, at what point did society decide and say that the work in a household uh, is
Women's.
menial work, and the work that is done outside the home is not menial? I mean, when I look at my
It's the
mother and
monetary. It's
monetary,
monetary.
exactly. I mean, you look at the score of knowledge that mums have. I mean,
And
making
the amount of work they do.
exactly, cooking, nourishing us, taking care of our health, of mental health, physical health, the thousands of things they know how to
Accounting,
cook,
accounting.
everything, managing the household, entire expenses. These are like 5 full-time jobs, just to be clear. So, but again, I feel this is capitalism to a certain extent, in colonialism, which has pushed us into thinking that only the work that is outside the house, that is bringing in money, is of value. And sadly, now then we probably like to think of women only as capable of doing what we now think is menial work. So then they can't do anything more. And even though there is a lot of breaking of glass ceiling happening, I think there's still a long way to go.
Yeah. I will still stretch the question of, although it was one question for me, but I would still like to stretch the question to really get an understanding from a person like you, because you also represent a younger generation. I mean, if I am seeing it in my relation, I mean, when I'm talking about leadership, I'm really talking about they being in respectable position, as in position where they can influence policy decisions, where they can steer situations, where they can really bring a change. And there are many women doing that, but somehow we don't really have we don't really have a well documented work of it, which is what we are trying to do through our studies also now. And b this whole understanding that many boardroom decisions of water are all manuals.
Actually, boardroom decisions for most things in the world are
Even
mostly men
abortion is
taking the
discussed by men,
yeah.
for that matter.
Yeah. So it's not
No, but
just
then
water.
why do you think it is like this in a particularly when we focus on water? Because most of the time when we are talking about water and women as a subject, as a integrated subject, we often find that the vulnerable side of women is discussed. That women in water, basically how women are fetching the water, taking care of the house, and all blah blah blah. But there is not much talking about that there are women who are bringing a change. There are women who are reformers. There's not much documentation done on them. I mean, I'm just trying to understand from you, how do the youngsters see these kind of things? Because if they don't look up to many women, then again we are setting up a kind of a reference where we see that water leaders are men leaders, or decisions are very masculine for that matter.
Yes. No,
I
I
do
think
not relate men and masculinity. I mean, but still, I mean, the fact is that there are more men in the water sector.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying, and I think this is unfortunately true for most sectors in the world, not just water. That when it comes to the public decision-making place, which again in today's society, unlike where decisions were made at local levels, at least most of such decisions, now everything is, made at a state level or a, central level, board meetings, and these are people who are very disconnected from ground realities. Yeah, and the other bit, the documentation bit, I think that's been a problem for thousands of years. I mean, I was having this very interesting conversation with a professor, and there was something in the Mahabharata, and we were having a discussion about it. I don't remember what. And I thought, this seems a little odd. I mean, I like the Mahabharata as a story, a lot of female strong characters too. And by strong, I don't necessarily mean physically strong. And I think I was asking, why is this written in this way? This doesn't sound nice. If I was a woman, I wouldn't like to read this.
It's written by men. It's written by men and read by men.
Exactly what he said. Ki Garima, these were oral traditions. We don't know if the women also had these traditions, and they most likely did. Of course they did. But what got written down probably, had this dominance of men writing those things down. So what would Mahabharata look like, if my grandmother wrote it? And that was a very interesting take. And I think probably maybe a slight benefit of being from the younger generation is because there's mass media, so it is easier for information to reach. Today we have this water council where there are so many women, and because of people like you who have thought about including the younger generation, so I have this opportunity to meet so many other women, and a lot of them are older than me, who are working in this sector. And that has helped the situation, and that documentation definitely needs to be increased. And also, I studied literature, I studied gender, so I, unlike a lot of other people in my generation, I also had access to the lesser documented things, but because it was my area of expertise, I did study these things. And so from a young age, I knew women have been doing a lot of work since creation. So it's just modern perception that makes us feel that they have not been doing enough or something. But again, documentation very important because this is how then young girls and men see that, oh, this is also a possibility, right? It's not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the very purpose why I could really think about doing this kind of documentation. I mean, it's an oral documentation. We call it autoethnography for that matter, as a research method, because one of my learning itself is that not many women are interested to self-promote, even if they are doing good work. And that also is hampering the very idea of, elevating the woman leadership in the society. And B, they do not have time. I mean, they really don't want to do these kind of things. And some people have to really take a back seat and start thinking about it, that if we can document 100 women for that matter, which is a wish list in doing this Women for Water, at least there will be a documentation of 100 women who have walked this water, profession. It can be taken further, but definitely there is something extremely missing from the historical evidence that there were many women leaders, and it is the lack of documentation. Probably there were, but we don't know. I mean, there are a handful when we compare with the the other counterpart for that matter. So let me go to another question, which is a ripple effect of this question, and also looking forward, and especially the generation of you, Kalpana, and others. How do you think we can bring a difference in, especially but talking about the gender aspect in the water sector? And how can we really create more opportunities that women leaders are really seen, or their presence is felt by the society? What do you think we can do as a network? Because now we have a good bunch of women who are very enthusiastic, what all things we should do? I mean, what do you think?
I think having a network of women who can support each other in each other's work is perhaps the most important thing that is possible through a network like this. I'll draw a rural modern comparison again. In a lot, so again, this is from a place I saw in Uttarakhand, and I'm sure this is happening in a lot of places in the mountains. Women go together to cut grass for the cows. Now 10 of them will go together, and
Even to fetch water.
Even to fetch water. That network, now if someday I am sick and I wasn't able to get grass, so someone from my network will come give me the grass, and I can repay the favor. Same goes for wood, and same goes for all the other tasks. When it's festivals, they go to each other's houses, help out with the housework, cooking and everything. And
this is beyond monetary favors, huh? That's the beauty of
yes,
beauty of the women network, and that it is not bound by any monetary favors. And even like in our Wiki Water Resource Council, for that matter.
There's no exchange of money. It is the exchange of one's time, which I think is the most important thing. You can give someone time and effort. And in cities, we have to create such networks, right? There's no organic network like this. Neighbors don't talk to each other. People are busy in their works.
Yeah, because no dependency, and that's why we have created this network.
Yes. So
So
when I look at a network, I think, more opportunities to get to know more women who are doing this work, getting to know them personally as people and not just as a public face. I think that's very important, because then you connect to them personally, and then relationships are formed, when that happens. And this support group is perhaps the biggest thing that I can think of. And I think the second bit is often thought about working mothers. We need more support for them, because the way that society is, it's still taking time for men to take back the interest that they should have been in terms of household duties, childcare, all of that. I mean, I grew up with a father, who would do the jhadu pocha whenever the maid would come. So mom is not well, he'll do the household things, he won't even ask, and he's almost more than 60, and he still does these things, and he doesn't think that he's a man, so this is not my task. No, he doesn't think like that. And we need more men to be to come back to this. But until that happens, workplaces need to be places where working mothers can work. I see so many women who have to leave their children with maids, and they're not comfortable doing that, which is completely understandable, or with in-laws, and bottle babies are being bottle fed. There's so many chemicals going, and obviously the mom's not feeling happy about it, being 8 hours away at work. And it's also very instinctive, right? Because you've given birth, and those initial few years, I mean, even if you look at the science behind it, the child does need the mother around. I mean, it's the mother who spent 9 months carrying the child, so that it's this connection that, I mean, whatever we say, the father doesn't have that sort of a biological connection. And I'm not saying the father does not do the parenting. We need them to do more parenting, so women have more time to do some of the other things as well. But a lot of women I see in my now that a lot of my friends are having babies, but these are questions that they're struggling with. Why can't I take my baby to work? Why can't I have a childcare center at work where it's possible for me to be around my baby, which is, by the way, the natural thing. I mean, as parents, we're not supposed to spend...
It's so unfortunate that our system is not supporting these things. In fact, they are demeaned. And I think every office, even if it is an office of 3 people or 30 people, it should have childcare facility. Because we all are born through these mothers, Then suddenly a woman who becomes a mother or pregnant, her value becomes less in the society. And that is the capital or the monetary value, and which is unfortunate. We keep it there because we are not discussing those aspects. We have to bring back the focus on the water discussions. But I think these are very pertinent points if we really want to raise the bar for bringing more women at the leadership position, their personal lives have to be made easier. That is the takeaway from this kind of challenges which they face. But apart from that, do you also think that as younger generation, there are more things which can be done? Social media is going far, or maybe encouraging more women to take up water sector. What do you think you can do as, I mean, you as a person, as Garima, how do you think you can increase the women leadership or presence of women leadership in the society? What will be your role? Because you are also heading the Andaman and Islands and as a state president. So what is, how do you see you will be increasing your footprint as a more women leaders bringing into the system?
I think that is something that could be possible by meeting children and working with them. So one of my favorite activities on fields is when I interact with children. And it's always a very joyful activity because kids are always learn, play. And I think if from a young age they see that that any kind of work can be done by anyone, and that it's not menial to do a certain kind of job, or better to do another kind of job. If they have those examples in front of them, I think there's nothing bigger than that can be done. Because even talking about things, someone was the prime minister or this and that, good examples, but I think people need to see something in front of them happening. It may not be very large scale. I'm not working for India. I am doing my small bit in a small part of the country, but it's enough. Bahan local ke liye theek hai. That there's a woman doing this. Yeah. So I think
you put it very well that you go to the school. Basically, we start changing things from there.
Yeah.
So that's a very good point, actually. So we have to basically then imbibe more water education in the school level and also gender education in the school level, for that matter.
Yeah.
So I
think it's sad that we have to think about gender education in school. It's really sad, actually. But
we have to.
Yeah.
We have to. I wish we live a day when there is no discussion on gender and we just see each other as human beings, because it's not only men and women gender, there are more genders also who are facing much more difficulties than we talk about as women. Yes. So I think we can talk about gender some other day, but we have to keep focus on water and women. So that's it from my side, Garima. Thank you so much for giving those insightful thoughts, because I'm also constantly learning from the younger generation what we can do and facilitate and take, so that you guys can take further steps which we could not take in our time when we were as young as you. So it's like taking some steps further from where we are there today. So thank you so much, Garima, and I now invite Kalpana again to take the last question and also do the vote of thanks. Thanks, Garima.
Thanks, Mansi.
Thank you, Dr. Mansi. Thank you so much for asking these wonderful questions, and it just gave me at least here an idea to know more about Garima and the kind of work she's doing. So Garima, I've heard like you really are into, talking about gender, talking about water, waste, and how we can, bring out the more activity and involvement of the youth or the next generation that is coming up. So my next question to you, and is also the last question of this discussion today, is if you have any message that you wish to share with like the young professionals who are going to enter the water field, or anything that you have specifically for women that you would want to share with us.
Anything specifically for the youth or for the women, right?
Yes.
Okay. There's nothing new that I have to say. I mean, there are so many people who've said this before. We're living in the middle of climate change. I mean, people say 7 saal baad hoga, it'll happen 20 years later, or when the Arctic sheets will, but 400% increase in wildfire. What is it? Is it not climate change? 70% reduction in wildlife of the last 50 years. Is that not climate change? And I think this message has to reach people. We can't keep living in a bubble, or technology will save us, or someone will come up with the technology, or Musk will, take us to Mars and we'll live there. Pata nahi, we really don't know. And even if we do, we can't take care of one planet. We'll go end up screwing the other planet also. So we have to, start looking at how we are living. Very, very, very crucial to do that, because the lifestyles that we're living and that we're aiming for, very westernized, energy intensive lifestyles, they are just not compatible for life on Earth. And why important for youth and women? Because women play a very important role in society. I mean, the funny thing is that, that even if a woman has no public position, a woman still has such an important role in taking care of the family, because everything that she does influences at least 5, 6, 10 people, unlike men who, and nothing against them for saying this, just the way today's society is. I mean, you look at interventions when they're designed, if women are given more income or access to funds or education, that it filters down to the family. That may not necessarily happen when it comes to men, because a lot of it goes for alcohol and spending on things that are not required. So that way, women, even when they're doing nothing, are doing a lot. So that's why we need to tap into them. Yeah. And when it comes to the youth, I'd like to think I'm the youth also, that I'm not, technically though, it was when I realized I'm not 25 anymore, and 25 is the demographically, that is the youth of the country, that realizing that was sad. But anyway, for this discussion, I'm the youth. We are living through the crisis, and let's stop pretending that it's going to happen 5 years down the line. And we have to start really rethinking everything, and not just thinking, doing it. The time for thinking is way gone. It's gone in our parents' generations, to be honest.
I really like what you said, considering that we are living in a generation that we can see the climate change or any other change, be it in the water sector, talking about water insecurity, water conflicts that are occurring. And yes, we are the generation, we should aim more towards the action rather than just talking about it, thinking that it will happen some other time later, so others should take care. We should be the one taking the initiative. So on that note, thank you, Garima. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. We are grateful to have learned about water endeavors, and thanks to the participants for taking out time to be with us. We look forward to having you coming Monday and the Mondays to come. The next Monday Munching Musing on 7th November is with Dr. Roshan Ara. For regular updates, please follow our social media platforms. Do take care. Bye and see you.